my name's Andrew, and this is Canadian Starships. Let's continue building the 650 scale Enterprise D. Welcome back to update number 11 on the 650 scale Enterprise D projects, and we are making progress. In the last update, we got the whole secondary hull constructed. Now, there is refinement work that has to be done. That's going to be done a little bit down the line, but we are going to be moving on to the saucer section today. So the first thing I have to do is work on getting lighting in the bottom half of the saucer. I need to fill the large windows that are in there, probably with my solar res glass technique. I need to block off some of the windows for lighting, and I need to get LEDs in there. So window lighting, navigational lighting on the bottom half, and the lower saucer phaser array. That's all got to go in, and then the metal plate is going to be installed, connected directly to that bottom portion of the saucer. Then it's going to get hung, essentially, from the armature, and the saucer lower section will get connected to the neck of the secondary hull. Then we're going to work on the upper saucer, getting that lighted, and that will be the last piece that goes on. So let's get right at it.
But before we get started, why not take a moment and click the subscribe button? And while you're here, click on that notification bell so you don't miss a single update.
The bottom side of the saucer, on the inside, I have filled in all of these windows on the inboard area on the bottom saucer. Now, I was thinking about doing the solar res glass on the larger openings. You've got a window back here and a window back here that are larger, and then you've got the 4 openings that are the navigational deflector on the front. I ended up just filling those in with solar res glass, but I did put some diffusion material. Because those are bigger openings, you don't want to be able to see the shiny lights inside. So some diffusion material has been added. Now, this one up here is going to be light blocked from the rest of the model with lights just for those, because they are going to be blue lights most of the time. And I was originally going to build a light box, but I'm looking at the placement of the LEDs, and if I lay it down flat, I can just position one LED per opening there and not have any problems, and I'll just light block it in with tulip or something similar. The other area where I'm going to need to light block or light box a specific area are the arboretum windows. Those are on the upper section. So I'm going to start getting LEDs wired up. I need to get these LEDs wired up. I need to get the phaser strip wired up and testing, and then I need to figure out what I'm doing for window lighting on the bottom. So either I will mount some on the actual kit here, or I might just mount them on the metal armature. We'll see. I'll just have to play around with that. If you're looking at these dark lines that you see on the model, that is the positioning for the armature. That's where the metal plate is to be lined up so that it lines up with the metal arm. Each of these two kits are going to be a little bit different when it comes to the alignment, because we hand built those metal arms for the armature. So everything's going to have its own alignment that is specifically designed for that particular ship. So each one will be positioned differently. So there's a specific metal plate that goes in this specific saucer that's going to line up with that specific arm. First of the lighting is installed into the lower saucer section. Just a quick tour. We've got the navigational lights on the front, the sides, and the ones that pair up with the neck lights on the back of the saucer. We've also got the navigational deflector LED installed. I've just given that a treatment of tulip to light block that in. So that's wet right now. I'll have to wait for that to dry. But I'm going to be moving on to installing the phaser array LEDs. And I've got to actually trim those down a little bit because the clearance on this is very tight. And there's a little bit of extra material on the LEDs that I can trim away just to shorten them down a wee bit. So I think that's what I'm going to have to do just to make sure I've got the proper clearance. And then once those are in, we can get the metal plate on top of this, and there's going to be some window lighting installed on the bottom of that metal plate to take care of the inner bowl windows here, all those dormer windows. Now I want to walk you through the process as I go along here of installing the phasers into the ship. When I wanted to find out how long the strip was, I kind of had to just lay it inside and get the best approximation I could. Now, it was 2 and they're over here, 2 LEDs too long. So I had to trim that up and then reattach the out data cable on the other end. Then what I've done is I have backed them in some very thin styrene sheet. And what that's going to do is, you don't need it for the light blocking, but it does assist with adhering the strip down to the kit. The back of the LED strips are very difficult to attach to the model. Glue doesn't like to stick to them. Or you have to remove that plastic and you've got the sticky backing, which then causes some other issues. So it's just best to adhere it to a piece of very thin styrene sheet that you can just cut into strips here. Now I've temporarily, this is just tacking it into place. I've used hot melt glue to tack it into place. I don't use hot melt glue for permanent work. I only use it for quick initial attachment. So it's been tacked down all the way around, held in place with some hot melt glue. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around and I'm going to permanently adhere it with epoxy all the way around. And then I'm going to start working on building out my light box for it. So I've also got to be very careful how high this goes, because I've got that metal piece that goes right on top. So I have very little clearance. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create another piece of styrene strip that's shorter than this is and ring it around in front of the LEDs, and then I'm going to cap it off somehow. So either that's going to be additional styrene, or in this case I may use white electrical tape and epoxy the white electrical tape down. It might just be a little bit easier to work with. We will have to see. But that is how I am approaching installing the phaser arrays, and it's already fairly solid in here with just the hot melt glue holding it in place, but that is only to hold it in place while the epoxy gets a chance to do its job. So that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to lay in epoxy all the way around. Then I'm going to start working on building out the rest of the lighting box. Second stage of phaser work is done. That is creating that light block wall and getting it installed. So what that is an 8mm wide strip of styrene going all the way around. It's actually in 3 pieces, and it's been light blocked with black paint on the outside. It's got the white of the plastic on the inside. It's been tacked into place with the hot melt glue, and it's been epoxied on the inside on this one to permanently bond it to the model kit. I'm going to go around once the epoxy is fully cured, and I'm going to touch up the bottom edge on the outside with a little bit of tulip so that there's no light leaking underneath this wall. Then we're going to be working on getting the top covered all the way around, and that'll be the phaser strip on the bottom of this model done. 2 important bits of progress to update you on here. First, the phaser array is complete. It's got the top on it. It's been secured down. This is electrical tape, white electrical tape, which has been epoxied down in addition to its own natural adhesion, just because I don't want it to ever go anywhere. So that is ready to go. I've also connected the data out from the phasers to the data in on the navigational deflector for the saucer. The next piece of update for you is the metal part, which goes in here, something like this. Let me just move these wires out of the way. And it sits in here. The navigational the nav lights are situated in such a way that the wiring will go over top of the metal frame once it's inside. And all the LEDs for the bottom have been wired in. All the power leads are coming out through these holes in the metal plate. I've got the data in for those windows and the data out over here. I'm going to flip this over and just show you what this looks like on the other side, because this will never, ever be visible again after I install this down. So there are the LEDs. Let me just set this down where I'm not pinching any wires. So these are the LEDs, and what's happening is the data is going one to the other, one to the other. I'm going to epoxy these down before I install the metal plate, the wires, and all of the power is going in and will be connected together so that all of them get properly powered. And these lights are going to give lighting to the bowl in here, and it'll also give lighting to the whole inside as a whole, because everything's going to be kind of bouncing around and filling indirectly, which I really like indirect lighting on these things. So I'm going to get those wires epoxied down to the plate here, and then I think we're ready to install the metal part permanently, and that'll be a huge step. We are making huge strides. The metal piece is permanently affixed to the saucer. In fact, I can just pick her right up. Oh, she's heavy. I can pick her right up just by the metal piece. Not a problem there. I did affix these in the up position, thinking it was going to make it easier to get them into the metal post here, but when I did a quick test fit, I couldn't get these in when I was getting the saucer onto the neck. So I've had to remove these from being permanently affixed with a pair of pliers and let them hang down. It's just going to be a little tricky to get them to go into the holes in the post up here once everything's in. But we'll do a test fit with it secured only by the post, see how that works. But yeah, this is ready to be installed onto the neck. I keep saying it's going to be a huge step, but all these steps are big, huge steps that we're finally getting accomplished. You really do have to get a ways out from the ship to get it all in when the saucer is installed. And that's what we've got happening here. The saucer has been permanently installed. You can see the JB Quick Weld in there, and it's not holding the weight of the saucer. The metal armature, that aluminum disc bolted to the arm, is transferring all the weight down through to the base and bearing all that weight. So there is not much weight being put onto the neck here. The epoxy, or the JB Quick Weld, really is just holding the plastic together. It's not doing any load bearing, which is exactly what you want with this model, because that represents a chunk of weight. And there it is, installed on there. Very nice. There will need to be some cleanup on that seam, but that seam isn't the one that we're going to be worried about. The seam that we're going to be worried about is the one right here once the top part goes on. And the next job I have is to get all the wiring connected on this and get all the wiring and LEDs installed onto the top part. Once that's done, we'll be able to close up the majority of the work on this project. And then it'll be the fine detail stuff before we get to doing the paint work. So here's a quick look at how the effects are looking so far with the lighting. The internal lighting's coming on, the warp engines, the deflector dish, it's going to go to warp, and then shortly after it goes to warp, we should see some, there we go, some phaser firing effects. Now, the tape is still on the phaser strip, so it's not really showing fully, but even with the tape on, you can really get a good idea of what this is going to look like. All the lighting and wiring for the bottom saucer section is now complete. I still have to epoxy everything down. Reason I haven't done that yet is because I actually installed these lights. I wired all these up on the metal here, and you can see that they're going from one to the other. That made the most sense for those particular LEDs. The rest of everything is wired up here in the center. These LEDs on the outside ring still have to do their burn in, but they are there. So once they're done, their long-term burn in test, then all of that will be epoxied down. But that's all the lighting I can get into the bottom half of the saucer. Everything else, lighting-wise, for this ship now has to go in that top saucer area, which involves the phaser strip, the navigation lights, and the lighting for the bridge and the conference room. we're getting dangerously close here, everybody, to getting that saucer closed up.
First little bit of work on the upper saucer part is done. Two things I have done. I've installed the bridge and conference room module, which were painted by Donnie Daughtry, and a link will be to his channel in the description of this video where you can check out what he does. He paints tiny things. I have lighted this. Let me just see if I can show you here. There is, if you can see that, there is one chip SMD in there that I had to wire up. And that's going to be the last SMD or the last LED on the data chain. And that's right at the main bridge's main screen. Had to think about that for a moment. And then I attempted to do some addressable LEDs for the conference room, but it just was not working out. So what I've done is I've inserted two 0402 SMDs, one on each side, and those will be tied into the always on navigation light circuit. And that really does do a nice dimly lit conference room the way that you would expect it to be. And then the bridge can be nice and bright. So that area is taken care of as far as installation and wiring for LEDs. And if I remember to show you, you might have seen some rough preview video of those two in here. The other thing that's been installed is the LED for the Arboretum. Now, we want this to be able to be isolated from everything else, and generally that is a blue color. So what I've done is I've mounted the LED just above where the windows are, and we're gonna light this indirectly with a little light box, which will just pop on top of there. I'll make some space for those wires to go through. That'll be secured down there. That way the light will shine, and we should get a really nice glow happening with the Arboretum lights. And then because they are blocked off from everything else in the ship, they can be whatever color the client wants them to be, which I really do enjoy that we can do that with these addressable LEDs. So that is going to be installed. It'll be light blocked though before it gets installed, and I will make some space for the wires to pass through. Next thing I'm going to install are the phaser array LEDs for the top saucer. Sometimes when you're building, things don't go right and you do have to make corrections or alterations, and that goes double when it's a garage kit. So I just put the upper saucer on top of the lower saucer so that I could align the navigation lights together and make sure that they were in the right spot. When I put that saucer on, there was a significant gap between where the saucer here ends and where this surface begins. And I thought, okay, let's check the other side, and the other side wasn't as bad. So I thought, okay, user error, I installed it incorrectly. So I popped the lid, and this proves that the entire saucer is being supported by the armature and that the weight is not on the neck there. So I've re-separated it. I'll have to clean out all that JB Quick Weld before I put it back together. And I discovered, no, it was not user error. I aligned it to the best of my ability. It is the print of the neck that's making it not align properly. Editing Andrew here. It wasn't the kit. It was, in fact, user error. You'll see it back here. The top of the saucer is about ready to go on, and I'm just about to film the update on what I've done here. But I just want to point out, it wasn't the kit. I misdrilled the holes, or misaligned the holes in the metal disc. I had to cut the bolts so that I could separate it from the armature and reinstall a bolt and come up with another solution to connect the front of the armature to the disc. So Not a problem with the kit. It was user error, and I had to go through a big job. Pop that saucer off, re-drill through metal while the metal was attached to the model, and I also lost the lights. So I had to go through and find where the wiring had separated when I had to handle that really roughly and precariously to fix the problem. Everything's good now. I ended up having to do a very almost impossible solder fix on the LED strip that's on the bottom of the arm up there. Yeah, that was basically like a shot in the dark to get that to work properly, to get that fixed. And fortunately, it worked first time. So, not a problem with the kit, user error, but we're all good. So, back to the clip. That's where I'm at. Also, phasers and Arboretum are installed on the top saucer. That's just been put away so I can deal with this little issue. Issues happen, especially with garage kits. What separates the builders and the great builders is just how you think through fixing it. And if you can get through those problems and find a solution and fix it and make it right, that bumps you up to being a great builder. Quick update look at the Enterprise D. Of course, I have that repair work or adjustment work that I did on the armature. I actually had to saw this bolt off and replace it with another after drilling a brand new hole. If I move the camera over this way, you can see the pre-existing hole. Then there is a bolt there that I can't remove and I cannot replace. So I've had to suspend the front with some wire. That'll get a bit of epoxy before we seal this thing up, just to make sure that that wire doesn't go anywhere. And there's several strands of it there. It will hold very nicely. All of the wiring is tacked down. All of the LEDs are tacked down. And in order to join the wiring on the bottom half here with the wiring on the top half, I am running the wires out the impulse engines. I'm doing the same thing on the top saucer so that when they get installed, I'll be able to connect the wires here and then just tuck them inside because we have to create the housing here for the impulse engines anyway. So we're going to use those as join points. They'll get connected and then just tucked inside behind the impulse engine. So I've got all of the data and the nav lights coming out this side, and I've got the main power for all the addressables coming out this side, and then they are going out the appropriate sides on the top saucer, which I will show you here in a moment. Here's the top saucer part, a lot less going on here. The phaser strips installed, the bridge and conference room are installed. There is a bit of a mess of wiring, but trust me, it is all organized and I know exactly where everything is going. And just like on the bottom saucer part, the appropriate wires are running out the appropriate sides of the impulse engines where they will be joined up together, top and bottom half. So the only thing left to do today in this update is to get this top saucer installed onto the rest of the ship. But before I get that top saucer on, I remembered I needed to create a bit of a brace here out of styrene on the top of the neck. Now that's not for support of anything. What that is that allows me to create a barrier so that when I put the gap filler in, the putty work between the neck here and the top of the saucer, I've got something backing it so that all the filler does not just disappear into the neck. From what I can tell from my test fits, there is quite a significant gap there, and that's just going to make the fill work a lot easier for me. So I had intended on putting this on tonight, but that's going to have to be tomorrow because I need this kind of brace piece to fully cure before I install that saucer top. So one more step, and then we're going to get that saucer top on. And with that, the saucer top is permanently affixed to the rest of the ship. Clamps are on, and it is just setting up there. You can see here how the wires are coming out of the impulse engine area. I can show you the same thing on the other side here. Now, the saucer is just setting up. Once it's set up, once it's cured, I will go in and I will connect these wires. Once those are connected, then everything is wired up and everything will work when it's plugged in. You'll also notice how there is the big gap there in the engine area. That's because there is no part that comes with the kit to fill the engine area, so I've got to scratch build that. Here is the gap on the neck. You can see how I've put the styrene in there. That's going to help me when I go to put the putty work in. I'll use Abe's epoxy sculpt to do the bulk of the work, and we'll see what I might switch to as I go through. We'll just see how that goes. What's up next? Well, once I get these wires connected and get those impulse engine areas just filled in, I have work to do on the nacelle areas here. They need some tender loving care where the front of the chiller grill meets the accordion collar area. There is a piece missing on that side. I'm not actually going to be able to... Let's see if I can get the camera around. There you go. You might be able to see how there's a bit of a piece missing there. That was broken off in transit, but I have the piece, and so I'll be able to reconnect that. So the warp engines need some work. The seam down here on the deflector dish needs some work. Obviously, the seam up here needs some work, and there's some other seam work, putty work, like back here that needs to be done. So that's going to be the next job. Once that's done, the whole thing is going to get a really good primer coat, and then we're on to the painting stage, but that is not going to be happening in this update. And that's one fully assembled 650 scale Enterprise D, the first of two. The main saucer is fully closed up now, and I've turned all the lights on to make sure that they are working. And don't let the fact that you can't see any windows on the top fool you. They are just masked in. All of the lighting is working. You can see I've got the constant on navigation lights functioning. And if you take a quick peek up to the bridge, you'll see that there are lights in the bridge. The conference room is dimly lit, and everything is working the way it is supposed to. Remember that I wired everything up through these openings in the engines for the impulse engine bay areas. Quick look inside there. Everything is functioning. If I get my mouse to click correctly here, I should be able to do a test fire of the phasers. There we go. Phasers are firing. Oh, it wants to fire all the way over on that other side. Let's see if I can do it again here for you. That's a little bit better. There we go. Really nice shot of the phasers firing. So everything is functioning. Everything is assembled. There's still the greebles to add. There's the work on this area here of both warp engines. There's the seam work, all of that. That's going to happen in the next update, but I'm so thrilled that main assembly is done. We have seam work and then paint. And that's going to be it for this update on the 650 scale Enterprise D projects. We have made such huge progress. All of the major assembly is complete. So next up, as I've mentioned, I'm going to add all of the greebles. I'm going to do the refinement work that has to be done in certain areas. I'm going to do all of the seam work, filler, that stuff, and we're going to get this thing prepped for paint. Hopefully get a good primer paint coat on and some base color coat on. It is coming together. This thing is going to be at WonderFest one way or the other. So if you've enjoyed this update, make sure that you hit that like button if you're new to my channel or you haven't done so yet. Hit that subscribe button today. You'll make me very happy if you do. But for now, my name is Andrew, and this is Canadian Starships. Have a great day, everyone.